So, does anybody recognize the start of their day in that clip? And I want to ask you a question that you can just sit with, you don't have to shout it out aloud. If somebody was to ask you how you are, what would you say? Yeah, indeed. But often what we'll do, and even today as I've spoken to people as they arrived, how's your week been? The answer is, it's been busy. It's busy. Busy, busy, busy. That's the standard response that we give. Because sometimes busy it feels like that's the polite thing to say. And if you're honest, there's also a little bit of satisfaction in saying it. Well, I'm not lazy. I've been busy. And we say that. It feels like people need us and we're productive and you're a person who's doing things, going somewhere, contributing something. And we've turned busyness into a virtue. The person who's always stretched, always in demand, always on the go. The person that maybe the rest of us might quietly admire. The person who has margin, who has rest, who moves through their week at an unhurried pace. We sometimes wonder, are they being lazy or missing out on things? Is there things that they don't do? Or maybe they're just not serious about life or taking opportunities that are in front of them. But here's the conflict I want us to look at as we go through these next few weeks. And I want to name it because I think most of us sense it, even if we've never yet said it out loud. And that is, Jesus was never, I repeat, never busy. Not once in the 4 Gospels does Jesus rush. Not once does he apologize for being late or because his diary was overloaded. Not once does he miss what's right in front of him because he is distracted by what comes next. Not once is he too stressed or too stretched or too depleted to be fully present with the person he's with right at that moment. And if we are to be Jesus followers, that creates a problem if we're to become more like him. And if you're sitting here and you're not yet a Jesus follower, well, keep listening because what we're exploring in this series affects every human and allows us to be the best version of ourselves, whether we follow Jesus or not. So Jesus, the most important human being who has ever lived, moved through his day with an unhurried purposefulness that most of us cannot imagine. And yet here we are, followers of this unhurried Jesus, living at a pace that would have been completely unrecognizable to him. And I was thinking about it as I was going through this week and thinking about the lifestyle that we have would have been completely unrecognizable 2 generations ago. And I think of my grandmother. She had 8 children. No washing machine, no microwave, no vacuum cleaner, no air fryer. Do people live without air fryers these days? She never had a TV. She never had social media. There was no 24-hour news channel. I don't ever remember her watching the TV, even though obviously, she died in 2002. But she never ever once had a TV. I don't ever remember her sitting watching the TV. She read a newspaper, usually about 9 o'clock at night, but she never had what we might call screen time, ever. She had 25 grandchildren. Every birthday and Christmas, we all got a present handmade by her. Later on in life, she worked full-time, and she became a local counsellor for where she lived. And that begs the question, are we any better off than previous generations with the things that they do? When I had my 2 children, a bit of time apart, she gave up 2 weeks of her holiday and came and stayed with me and helped to look after them. Helped look after me, really. And she did that. And she didn't do it for all of her grandchildren, but she did that for many of them. And so, we had close bonds. We were a very, very close-knit family in that respect. And the thing is that today we are constantly on. We are constantly available, permanently connected to a device. That means a world can reach us at any moment of any day, and showing the world just how busy we are with our iPads and our phones and walking around with them. And somehow, in the middle of all of this noise and demand and activity, we have become completely unavailable to the very people that God said mattered the most. And this is the conflict, isn't it? We say God's our priority. We've just been singing all about it. We believe it genuinely in our hearts. And then we look at our week, and when we really look at it, and we realize that our diary tells a very different story. It shows that following our faith is mostly and often not shown in our diaries. And most of us, if we're really honest, already know that. We just don't know what to do about it. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at that. Not to condemn, not to add any more guilt to your life that you may be carrying already, but for all of us to hold up a mirror and ask, is the life I am actually living matching the faith that I'm actually claiming? And if not, what does God want to do about that? So before we get into the scripture today, I want to share some information because I think we need to see the data before that we feel this weight of what is actually happening to us, and that Jesus is the answer. So according to Ofcom's most recent report, UK adults now spend an average of 4.5 hours online every day. This is just online time. Add in TV, and the average person is looking at a screen for over 6 hours of every waking day. And for those who are a bit younger, it's actually 6 hours online alone. 20 years ago, phones and apps didn't exist. And now look where we are. If this is you, and all of us, we have allowed intentionally or unintentionally allowed this to happen to our lives. So no wonder we don't have time to commit to God and the church He calls us to serve in. And here is the number that I think is most striking of all. So in 2024, the research found that the average person, and not that I want to call you all average, but maybe we are average, checks their phone 205 times a day. That's once every 5 minutes of your waking day. Not because something urgent has happened, just because it's there. We're checking, we're reflecting. Is this that automatic reflex action that we do, a habit so deep we no longer even think about it? Yesterday we had a great morning out in North End. Again, Julie and I were just remembering over an hour again just to give out 28 Bibles, lots of great conversations, lots of you seeing some of you out doing your shopping, and just great conversations of people, and what really strikes me most from having, done this 20 odd years ago is there's just no animosity. No one's shouting at you. No one's giving you rude things. That's what used to happen 20 years ago. Just none of it. Thank you, yes, conversations, giving leaflets out about the church, all of that. It is such a positive experience. For those of you that were there, would you say, yeah, it was really good, really good. And then I asked the ones who were there yesterday, so the rest of you won't have had a preview of this question. If you add up all of your time that you're on your phone over an average lifespan, can you imagine how many years that is? You're not wrong. You're not far off there. 36 years of your lifetime online. That's a lot, isn't it? Let's just sink that in. Some of you may think, oh, well, I don't have enough time for my hobbies. Well, and don't get me wrong, I love a Netflix series like the next person, and really bad to just watch one. I can't just watch one, then I have to watch the next one. So I get it. As I say, this is not about condemning us, it's just about showing a mirror of what's really going on in our lives. And as I say, 2 generations ago, they didn't have this. They didn't have this stuff taking up their time. You know, I remember my granddad used to watch the news, the racing results, and that was it. And, you know, I know, because if I was there, and I lived a lot with my grandparents, I had to go and press the button to change over the TV channel. You know, I'd get poked to get up and go and have a look at it, you know. And none of these things were around at that time. We say we don't have time. Yeah. I'm going to have to pay you, because you're coming in with all the right answers. We are not just busy in our bodies, we are overwhelmed in our minds. And maybe it's our minds that think that we're overwhelmed. And I just thought this was another interesting bit of information. The average person now encounters more data in a single day than someone that lived 400 years ago would have had in their entire lifetime. Your brain feeling like it's going to explode, not coping, not dealing with stuff. Stop putting stuff in it. It's what we have to do, I think, anyway. The human brain was just not designed for this volume information, and it's costing us. And I want to just have a quick look now at what this does to our brains. The American neuroscientist, his name's Daniel Levitin, has studied what constant connectivity is doing to the human brain. And what he found, I think, is very troubling. Multitasking, we all like to show off about how we multitask as well, particularly if you're female. Multitasking creates this dopamine addiction feedback loop, effectively rewarding the brain for losing focus and for constantly searching for external stimulation. Can you sit still? You always have to be doing something. I heard about a month ago on the TV, on the radio, where they were talking about TV programs, that they now deliberately dumb down TV programs because people are watching the TV with their phones on. So they've made the content to be less challenging because they know people won't be able to follow where the storyline is going because they sit there on their phones as well. So we're creating in ourselves this dopamine addiction feedback loop. The same mechanism that drives addiction to alcohol or gambling is being triggered every time we pick our phones up and try and do too many things at once. Our brains are being chemically rewired to crave distraction. And the more we feed it, the more it demands. We'll all be familiar with how addiction works. The checking becomes compulsive. The stillness becomes unbearable. And we call it being busy. But what it actually is an addiction we have mistaken for productivity. Levitin also found that multitasking, again, we like to do that, increases the production of cortisol, the stress hormone, and adrenaline, and it overstimulates the brain. It causes what we call mental fog and scrambled thinking, which is why at the end of an exhausting day of being perpetually busy, we often can't remember a single thing about any real significance that happened that day. We were busy, but we weren't present. And there is an enormous difference between the two things. Every so often amongst the staff team, I do it very regularly, and ask the staff team to do it, is to clock their hours. Tell us what you're doing for each part of your day, just so that it gives us lots of things that helps us about, is there stuff we need to stop doing? Is there stuff we need to put more time and resources in? That kind of thing. But what I find when I do it is because I have to measure the time, I have to clock it in and out, I only do one thing at a time, and I'm far more productive and so it's kind of like that thing of like, well, why don't I just do this all the time? Because it helps me focus. And then there is something extraordinary that neuroscience has discovered in recent years, but has always been there and designed by God as being part of us. It's called the default mode network. And this is a series of brain regions that activates not when we're busy and focused doing something, but when we rest. So this all kicks in when we're still, when we rest. Who knew? Somebody designed a Sabbath for us. When we just have nothing else going on and we allow our minds to wander, the default mode network starts to refire and get going. For years, neuroscientists thought this network was simply the brain idling, just resting, doing nothing more useful, but they've discovered that this is completely wrong. It turns out that this default mode network is the seat, the very heart of creativity, self-reflection, memory consolidation, emotional processing, and future planning. This is where you get the biggest breakthroughs, the deepest insights, the most important ideas. They do not come when we're frantically busy. They come when we stop. When I go on holiday, I have loads of great ideas because that's when the creativity starts to come back again. What about the drive home from work or the walk home from work when suddenly in the shower or something, you just stop all of a sudden? You get a breakthrough on a problem that you've been trying to deal with or trying to think about how you might do it. The research suggests that our brains operate on what's called an ultradian rhythm, this natural 90-minute cycle of high focus by a necessary period of rest and restoration. And lots of business leadership things will tell you, like, if you're going to do an activity, do it for 90 minutes and then have a break. And then do another activity for 90 minutes and then have a break. Not to, you can't just keep going and you can't do things for 3 hours, but to do it for 90 minutes and then have a break. We often will ignore this rhythm when we push through and we top up with caffeine from either energy drinks or coffee, and we look at notifications and all this constant stimulation that's going on. And when we live like that, when we push through, our error rate climbs, our creativity drops, our annoyance and getting frustrated grows, and our capacity for sustained attention collapses. The default mode network is not the enemy of productivity. And scientists now describe it as the recovery system that makes productivity possible. So what this is telling us is that literally the brain was designed to need rest. It's not a luxury when you sit in the garden and you do nothing, or you sit on the sofa and you do nothing. I'm not talking about in front of the TV. I mean just doing nothing, going for a walk, doing those types of things. It's not a luxury. It's not a reward for having done stuff. It's a biological necessity. And it's now being linked to all these high rates of ADHD, anxiety, obesity, some depressions, stress, and all the illnesses that go with that. God built rest into the architecture of the human mind, not just the body, but the mind. And when we refuse it, we are not being more productive. We are eroding the very capacity that makes us effective. And we're literally making ourselves and our children ill by not resting. Who knew that was the thing? We need to rest and take Sabbath. With all of that in our minds, let us now go to one of the most honest and uncomfortable scenes. Maybe some of us recognize this text, and maybe you recognize the tension that is in it as we enter into Luke chapter 10. Jesus comes to visit two sisters, Mary and Martha. And Martha, well, often she gets a bad press, doesn't she? For rushing around and doing things, and she gets unfairly treated in sermons. She's being an excellent host, though, isn't she? She's preparing food. She's making sure that the guests are looked after properly, and she is serving. And serving is good and a necessary part of being a disciple. Martha is doing exactly what a good, responsible, caring person does when an important guest arrives. But her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. And Martha was distracted by all of the preparations that had to be made. She came to him, that being Jesus, and she asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has let me do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." How many of you can remember that kind of attitude with your siblings or children where they're like, "Tell her," not helping and all of that? Notice the word, though, that is used here, distracted. Martha is not doing something wrong. She's not saying it's unfair. She is distracted. And there's something so raw and so real about what she says. The resentment of the person who is carrying the load of everyone else around them. That frustration of feeling overlooked while everybody else gets to sit still. Maybe some of us do know that feeling intimately. And Jesus responds with something extraordinary. He does not rebuke Martha for serving. He does not tell her the meal and the hospitality doesn't matter. What he says is, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. That's quite harsh to hear, isn't it? Somebody else has chosen something better than you. Worried and upset about many things. That's the diagnosis. It's not selfish, just worried and upset about any things. The busyness has curdled into anxiety. The serving has become all about striving. And in the middle of many things, Martha has missed the one thing that really matters. And what the neuroscience now confirms is what Mary instinctively knew. The most important work is not always the most obvious work. Sitting still with Jesus is not laziness. It was the activation of the default mode network at the deepest possible level. It was the soul doing what the soul needs. It was choosing the better thing. There are a lot of us in the room who are Martha right now. Not bad people, not careless people, just worried and upset about many things. And somewhere in the background of all of those many things, Jesus is in the room. And we don't stop to sit back and be with him. Be still and know that I am God. That word still in the Hebrew is rapha, and it means to release, to let go, to stop striving. Be still. And often we think of still as like, sleeping lions or whatever, isn't it? Like being really still. It's not. It's just that to let go. It's not a vague suggestion about taking time to relax. This is an active command from God. Release your grip. Stop trying to hold everything together by your own effort. Let go and know that I am God. And Jesus follows this up with, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. When you're weary and burdened, you kind of walk a bit like that, don't you? Yeah? And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The invitation of Jesus is rest. It's so countercultural to today, isn't it? When we're all busy and we're doing stuff, we have to have every day filled with everything. It's not productivity. It's not efficiency. Not a better time management system. Jesus offers you rest. And most of us are so busy that we never quite get round to fully accepting that invitation. Now, you may know that the yoke is something that was used to kind of bridge two animals together when they were working the fields, and it still is in many places. And they would put a more experienced animal with a newer, younger one to help train it. And that was the language that the rabbis used. Come and have my yoke. Come and learn from me. Come and use my experience and knowledge and let me pass that with you. So that's a language that they would have been very used to hearing, is come and be yoked to me. Come and learn from me all what you need from life. And there, that would have been teachings, that would have been reciting, that would have been laws, all of that thing. But Jesus is saying, come and take my yoke. Come and be yoked to me. I'm the experienced one. I'm the one who knows where we're going. I'm the one who knows what needs to be done. And you are learning. You are my disciple. That's the invitation. Come and learn from him. Because when you do that, when we allow ourselves to just go, allow ourselves to surrender to God, the yoke is easy and the burden is light. I want to tell you about a woman called Heidi Baker, if you've not yet heard about her. Heidi and her husband Roland founded a ministry in Mozambique in 1995, when it was officially the poorest country on the earth. And they started with nothing. No buildings, no money, no infrastructure, just some old army tents that they had in a field. Today, that ministry, known as Iris Global, operates across 38 countries with over 4,000 missionaries and staff, and they've planted over 10,000 churches. They run 5 Bible schools, 3 primary and secondary schools, and they serve 3,500 children through medical clinics and they offer fresh water through drilling wells in areas where there is none. They feed 10,000 children a day. The scale of what has been built is staggering. And Heidi Baker describes her ministry with one sentence that should stop all of us and make us think about our lives. All the fruitness flows from intimacy with him, our total connection and dependence on him. The 10,000 churches, all those children being fed, the wells that are drilled, the schools built, all of the miracles that are documented that happen within that ministry, all of it flows from intimacy. You can watch, I've listened to Heidi speak at events a number of times. You can watch a lot of those things on YouTube. And she says that when they first started, they were really busy. They were trying to do things. And then she just learned to stop. And now she very rarely leaves her house before 12 in the morning because she has to spend 6 or 7 hours in God's presence before she does anything. She seeks his presence, and the ministry has grown since then. Everything else was a struggle, and they still, get attacked. That people get killed. All sorts of things happen to what's going on. But God is at work in there, and this is the reason why. The fruit flows from intimacy with God. Those hours of apparent inactivity are the engine of everything else. I wonder if we applied that to our lives, that we would see things in a different way, that when we rest, that's the real power to seeing fruit in your life. It's the principle that Mary understood and Martha missed. Presence is not the opposite of productivity. It is the source of it. The person who spends time genuinely still before God does not achieve less. They achieve more, and with a clarity and a peace that the frantic person never finds. And going back to my grandma and what she would spend her days doing, one day was washing day, and that was it. That was washing day. Another day was cleaning, and so on. And we were all involved, and there would be talking and taking turns, building connection and community to do our bit that, however many years later, are still really precious to me. Me now? I put the washing machine on, I run the vacuum round, I put the dinner in the air fryer, I have the news on, make a few calls, check my emails, search the internet for something, order from Amazon or Temu, all at the same time, and less time it would take my grandma to wash 1 or 2 items. No wonder our brains are exhausted, and that makes our bodies and our souls exhausted. Not only are we not seeking his presence, we are busy doing the wrong things. Now, do you know that you're all theologians, whether you like it or not? And this is because your diary is a theological document. It tells the truth about what you actually believe. Not what you say you believe, what you believe through your actions, what you trust, what you value, and what you're willing to protect. If you opened your diary right now, whether that's online or a paper diary, and looked at the last 7 days, what would it tell you about who and what came first? Or if you don't keep a diary, if you reflect on what you did over the last week, where did you spend your time? and your energy? Where did your best energy go? Where did your sharpest hours go, and what were you up to at that time? For most of us, these hours are at work, and they go to the urgent, to the demanding things that can't be ignored. And then somehow God gets all the leftovers. The tired us at the end of the day, the distracted prayer in a car. So the call here is not to add more to your list. The call is to subtract, to identify things that are filling your day but do not bring meaning. The compulsive phone checking, the TV that goes on because you don't know what else to do with sitting in the quiet, the notifications that means that you're permanently available to everything except stillness. And then I want to encourage you to actively protect some time for God. Not because he needs it, but because you and I need it. Because the version of you that shows up to the rest of your life is shaped by your intimacy with God. The version of you that your spouse, your children, your friends, your colleagues need is the version that has had that intimate time with God, that has been still, that has been held in that easy yoke, that knows who you are and who they are before the demands of the day. So Mary chose the better thing. She chose presence over productivity. She chose to be with Jesus rather than to be busy for Jesus. And he said that choice would not be taken from her. That investment was permanent, and it's the same for us too. We're literally building up treasures in our hearts and in heaven for eternity. So can I encourage you? Can I compel you to look at your diary? Look at the coming 7 days and find one slot, just one, where you are going to stop. Not to catch up, not to be productive, not to just quickly do that other thing, but to just be with God. Start with 15 minutes. That's all you do. If you need to start with 5, start with 5. Undoing this addiction to constantly having some information could take a bit of time. But put it in the diary in the same way you would do a work meeting or catching up with friends or going to the cinema or the theater or something that you really want to do. It needs to be in there and protected in the same way. And when it comes up, keep it. So next week we're going to go into the second half of this title. Always busy, and next week it will be never full. Why is it that a life packed full of activity still leaves us feeling strangely empty? Why does the busyness never quite deliver what it seemed to promise? So don't miss it. It's going to be a slightly shortened one because of all our activities around Father's Day. But today I want you to carry one thing out of here. If nothing else, this one sentence. You will never find time for God. You have to make it. And he is so worth it. Mary chose the better thing. In the middle of a house that needed organizing, a meal that needed preparing, a sister who needed help, and a guest who needed attention, she chose to stop. She chose to sit. She chose presence over productivity. And Jesus said, that is the better thing, and it will not be taken from her. Heidi Baker built 10,000 churches from hours of stillness before God. The neuroscientists have discovered that your brain requires rest to do the most important work. The God who made your mind said, be still and know that I am God. The busy life will always, I would almost call it the God of the age, present itself as the only option to you. There will always be something else that can be legitimately fill the space that you have. There'll always be a good reason why now is not quite the right time to sit down or slow down. That is never going to change. The only thing that can change is our willingness to choose differently, to decide that God gets the slot and to protect it and then show up for it. And when you get there, rest.